Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about not what catches fish, but places to not catch fish. These are areas that I've had really poor success in. These are areas I've picked up on over my years and years of fishing that I just feel like these structures and pieces of cover don't hold fish nearly as good as a lot of the other places that you could be fishing in that lake. So I thought I'd share it with you. I'll be really curious to hear from you guys as well out in the viewer world as to if there's pieces of cover or structure that you have picked up on that just do not produce nearly as well as other pieces of cover. Because I really feel like the ones I'm going to give you are places that you can avoid. And I'm sure some of you out there will probably disagree with me, but that's fine. This is just based off of my experience. So we're going to dive right into these. I do want to remind you though that if you want to support the channel and you are looking to purchase tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. You can click the link in my video description and then bookmark it. You can bookmark it for future uses as well. The little bit that I make from your purchase goes back into making content for everyone out in YouTube world to hopefully help us all catch a few more fish. And like I was saying, the areas I want to talk about today might actually not help you catch a few more fish if you fish them, but if you avoid them or at least don't fish them as long, you hopefully will catch a few more fish because then you're fishing the right areas. So let's just dive right into this. The first one I think I'm probably going to have a few people argue with me on, and that is pine trees. Now, pine trees generally are not a very productive tree. Now, a lot of you, before you get all mad at me, a lot of you down south that live in areas that have tons and tons of pine forests and pine trees around are going to say you're crazy, Matt. Well, what I'm going to ask you to do is just pay attention to the number of bites or number of bass that you catch out of pine trees, like a ratio. You fish 25 pine trees, you catch 2 bass versus how many bass you catch out of non-pine trees. So if you happen to live on a lake that is just surrounded by pine trees, what I'm saying is you're going to notice is you'll have more bites out of other hardwoods. So your oak trees, your maple trees, things like that. You'll have a better ratio of the number of bites that you get out of those trees versus the ones you get out of pine trees. The reality is a lot of you live in areas where 90% of the trees that are in the water are pine trees. So obviously you're probably going to catch some fish out of them if you're fishing trees. Just pay attention to that ratio. It's funny because I feel strongly about this because up where I live, we have a lot of pine trees, but we have a lot of other hardwood trees as well. And what I'll find is you very rarely, very, very rarely will catch a bass out of a pine tree. And my reasoning for that is because the other 95% of the trees that are in the water are not pine trees. So those fish have the ability to say, hey, I don't like this tree. I'm going to this one. My reasoning for it is a couple of things. One, the pine needles will just generally stay on the tree for a long period of time, and they're not typical cover. It's almost like a scratchy substance that just stays there, right? They'll turn brown and they stay on that tree for a long period of time. And I think more importantly, I personally think that the pine trees have some sort of scent or acidity to them that the bass don't necessarily care for. They're a very aromatic tree. And I think there's an issue with that when it comes to the bass using them as cover. Now, again, there are bass that will use them. I just feel like they're using them because that's the cover they have available to them versus having the choice of going to other trees. So that's number one. Number two has to do with birch trees. Birch trees are a piece of cover that I very rarely catch fish out of unless they're a recent tree that's fallen where they still have green leaves on them, or they're in an area that has a lot of other cover. So maybe it's a birch tree that fell down into a little pad clump. Those are going to be areas that produce fish. You got two pieces of cover coming together, so that's a good thing. Birch trees, though, in general, if it's a fallen birch tree by itself, generally are not that productive. And the reasoning for this is the bark on it is white. It reflects light versus absorbing the light, and therefore the bass don't have a great shade line to live on. So this is something that a lot of you down south don't have to deal with, but up north here, if you've got birch trees or like aspen trees, that's another one that has a very light colored bark. Generally, they're not as productive as a lot of your other hardwoods. So if you are coming up here for vacation, you see a beautiful birch tree that's fallen in the water, don't necessarily expect to catch bass off of it. Again, there's always going to be one-offs. You can always catch a bass off of anything, but these are areas that, in my opinion, are definitely not as productive as other ones. A third piece of cover is what I call onion weed. I don't actually know the full name to it, but it's a bottom covering weed that grows maybe 2 feet off the bottom. Feels like a Brillo pad when you grab it. Really dense, really coarse, scratchy to the touch. And when you smell it, it has a very, very strong aroma, just like an onion. That is a bottom weed that I've never been productive out of. I'll catch fish occasionally if there's a defined edge of it or there's holes in it. But generally speaking, it's not a very productive weed. And I personally feel like it's for a couple of reasons. One, when it grows as a carpet. And I don't think the fish necessarily like to swim into it because there aren't good holes or tunnels and it's being so coarse. I actually would imagine it's somewhat bristly to them. If I had to compare it to like us, I try not to walk through raspberry patches because it's full of thorns. I kind of feel like that would be the same way swimming through this onion grass. The other thing is it is so aromatic. Again, when you smell it, it's got a strong pungent smell that I got to think there's some sort of smell or odor or something that the fish can pick up on that comes out of it that they just don't like. I've never had a good day of fishing. You catch a random little fish here, but I don't ever recall catching a big bass out of an area like that. So that's a third area. A fourth one has to do with docks. Um, there are some homeowners that I've noticed that are starting to paint dock posts white. And I've been told there's a couple of reasons for it. The white generally prevents or deters like some of your algae growth and some of your zebra mussels from attaching to it. Um, I don't know if that has to do with the light reflection off of it, but there's definitely been a movement where I've seen homeowners starting to paint dock posts, whether it's wood or even metal at times, white. Um, and I have never caught a bass that I can recall off of those white dock posts. So generally, if I'm going down a bank and I see a dock that's got a bunch of white posts on it, I might make a cast or two at it as I'm going by it, but I am not concentrating my time on that dock when I can skip forward to the next several docks that have, normal wood posts or metal posts. I'd love to hear if you guys have seen that similar thing. Like I know there's definitely a movement towards some white posts up in my area. Um, and then the last thing has to do with riprap. So a lot of times on riprap banks, what you'll find are there'll be stretches of rock that are different from other stretches of rock, and it generally just has to do with whatever that state or area that built the causeway had to utilize. And as an example, there's a lake where I fish up here that actually has like a stretch of polished red granite. So it's like my assumption is they either broke up a monument or broke up a building that had red granite because some of the pieces, one side will be perfectly flat and polished, and then the broken sides will just be the red granite side. But you actually in a couple areas can see like an engraving where they actually etched in names and dates and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's a monument, I don't know if it's a building, but there's one lake that's got miles of riprap, and there's like probably I'm gonna say 4 or 5 stretches of this red granite, polished red granite, that are anywhere from 50 feet to 150 feet long. And those stretches, when I first found them, I was really excited because I'm like, we've got miles and miles of riprap, and then these of the same rock, and then these little stretches of red granite. So it's the idea being something different will attract the fish. I've never caught a fish off of any of them. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's just not a natural rock in that lake. It's not a natural rock even on that causeway. The causeway is made out of much more natural rock that they quarried from the area. I don't know where they got the red granite from, but the fact that it's polished, I don't know if the algae and the crustaceans and things don't like the polish because it's so smooth or it doesn't grow on it. Don't really know, but I do know that a lot of times you'll find stretches of different rock like that when fishing riprap that just don't hold fish. And generally speaking, they're always much more man-made rock versus like natural quarried rock from that area. So generally speaking, at this point now, when I start, you get a feel for like what the rock looks like. It's usually very squared off. It looks like it's not natural rock for the area, and they're generally not as productive as the natural rock. So I'd love to hear from you guys on that too, if you've seen that happen in places. Generally speaking, you don't see like polished red granite used as riprap, but sometimes you do find little stretches like that that are a little different. Anyways, let me know in the comments section, what are some of the things that you try to avoid so I can learn from you guys as well. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, we'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.